Mi smo već prenajavili našeg gosta, profesora doktora Milana Mrkšića, i po želji našeg novo izabranog predsjednika, gospodina magistra Nikole Marića. On je hteo da jednu malu besedu ispriča vezano za dostignuća i velike uspehe ovog našeg čoveka i Srbina. Hvala lepa, gospodine Nikola, izvolite.
A jednostavno ovako, naš voditelj je smatrao verovatno da ja bolje govorim engleski od njega, pa je hteo da predstavim našeg glavnog govornika na engleskom jeziku. Imajte malo strpljenja, ali ovo je kratko, nije ovo ništa dugo. Ajde se pretljom. We have quite a few famous people in the field of science, literature, sports, and arts of all kinds who achieve a name as a result of their activities, but smaller number of those who were willing to share their knowledge and talents with our Serbian community in America. Professor Dr. Mrksich did devote a lot of time and talent on the works of our other Serbian greats such as Michael Pupin and Nikola Tesla, and became a leader in sharing with us the spirit of serfdom and science. Milan Mrksich is an American chemist, the Henry Wade Rogers Professor of Biochemical Engineering at Northwestern University. Yes, please applaud. He is currently the acting vice president of research at Northwestern University. His research involves chemistry and biology, and his laboratory has pioneered several technologies too complicated to explain here. Professor Mrksich has many other functions. Did I mention to you that he's also an inventor? It would take too much time to mention all his functions and inventions. Besides, you don't want to listen to me. I sure wouldn't want to. I hope he's willing to mention some of these awards in his speech. Born on August 15, 1968, raised in Chicago, graduated from the University of Illinois in 1989 with Bachelor of Science in Chemistry before completing his PhD in Organic Chemistry, which I hated when I was in high school. That's not easy, so you who tried it, you know. Organic chemistry can anybody do, but organic chemistry takes really a good student to be able to achieve something there. Thank you. Why do I say that? Because I'm a teacher too, I know. Where did I, oh yes, okay. In organic chemistry, 1994 that was, and he got that from the Caltech. After the graduate school, he became an American Chemical Society postdoctoral fellow at Harvard University. He worked for 15 years at the University of Chicago and then joined the faculty at Northwestern University in 2011. Milan received numerous awards for his work. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the pride of Serbian people, Dr. Milan Mrksich.
Da počnemo, jeli? Sretna nam slava Srpske narodne odbrane, Sveti Lazar Kosovski. U to ime pozdravljam članove Narodne odbrane te naše domaćine, gospođu Veru i Vladu Belo Petrovića. Zahvalan sam na časti koje ste mi ukazali i također pozdravljam njegovo preosveštenstvo vladiku Longina. Hvala vam svima prisutnim i da zajedno damo priznanje i zahvalnost predsima koji su došli, koji su dali živote i pokazali kako se brani srpski narod. Now, if you allow me, I'm going to switch to English because I want to make some comments and want to be sure I capture all my thoughts. I want to repeat all of the welcomes to the honored guests and hosts and all of you for taking time today to be with us and to remember the Battle of Kosovo and Vidovdan. I want to do a few things today. I actually want to talk about the history of that day, and I want to talk about some of the context that led up to it to give a better understanding of why what happened on June 28th, 1389 happened. And I want to talk a bit about what that set in motion in terms of what happened over the next 600 years. Now, this is a rich topic. It's very detailed. There are many parts which are still controversial and debated, and I'm not going to aim to be complete. My real goal, if I can share that, is for the young people to have an introduction to such an important part of their history, their culture, how religion became a central part of our community, the Serbian people. And so for those of you who know the topic in more detail than I do, I apologize for your patience with me. And I should say, as you've heard, I'm a scientist and an engineer, not a historian. I'm an amateur historian, which can make me dangerous, but I love reading history and I love talking about it, and I took an opportunity to brush up on the history today. So let's get started. The battle was 1389, but of course it didn't start with no background. And so if I go back with us to 1300, the beginning of the 14th century, this was a period where the Byzantine Empire was the strong power in the region. This was a time when the Ottoman Empire of the Turks was strengthening. They were in the east, but had visions to move west through what is modern-day Turkey, the city of Constantinople, which is today's Istanbul, and then through the strait into the southeast Balkan region, Bulgaria, and further in. The Sultan of Turkey, of the Ottoman Empire at that time, Orhan, was really the person who was there when they started feeling this power that they wanted to exert. And there was a key battle in 1329, the Battle of Peloponnesus, where the Ottoman Empire crushed the Byzantine Empire. And that was really the turning point that signaled a shift in power from the Byzantine to the Ottoman Empire. And it turned out over the next 40 years, they kept moving and they really occupied that whole region except for the city of Constantinople, because that was heavily fortified with walls, and it was a people inside the walls, but the Ottoman Empire everywhere outside. Now, Orhan eventually died, and there was much turmoil, as there always is in that period when there's a change in leadership or dynasty. Murad was the next sultan in the region, and Malo Yace, okay. Murad was appointed as the next sultan, and he was very aggressive. He really saw it as his legacy to control the entire Balkan region. And he was also a very aggressive and cruel man. As he was moving into Bulgaria, into Kosovo, into Serbia, he had something he called a 1/5 tax. 1/5 of all of the young boys were taken, sent back to Ottoman Empire, and became part of an army, the Janissary army, where they were effectively brainwashed, and they were the most loyal, fierce army in the Ottoman Empire to protect the Sultan, but obviously Christian young boys from Serbian descent. Now the Balkan region at that time didn't have states, it didn't have countries in the way you would recognize. It was a mix of different and shifting powers. Those included the Serbian Empire, the Bulgarian Empire, the Kingdom of Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. And that's where the state of things were. Now, I'm going to talk at the end about the Nebojša dynasty. This was such an important part of our background. But near the end of that empire in 1332, Stefan Dušan assumed the throne of Serbia. Probably to date the most significant leader of the Serbian people. He grew the Serbian territory, extended it into Greece, into Bosnia. He reduced Bulgaria and Bosnia to vassals. They were really serving him. Serbia was really the dominant power in the region at that time. He died in 1355. He was only 46 years old, which was still young in those days, and he was only 40 miles away from Constantinople, where he was going to conquer the city. Now, with his death, his son, Stefan Uroš, became the leader of Serbia. He was not as talented as a military commander and as leader. And over the next 20 years, what was a very unified Serbia population and territory disintegrated into a dozen or more principalities, each with their own leader and with a lot of infighting that was happening between them. When that happens, other powers notice and take advantage, and the Ottoman Empire took advantage. They saw this as their opportunity to expand and to take more lands. Now, Uroš didn't have children, so this was also the end of the Nebojša dynasty, another significant event I'll talk about. But first, in 1364, a coalition of Serbs and Bosnians and Hungarians tried to expel the Turks from Europe. This is known as the Battle of Mrksich, and it's significant because the Turks defeated this group overwhelmingly. And in many ways, that loss was a much more significant turn of events for the Serbian history than the Battle of Kosovo was. The following year, Vukašin Mrksich, a powerful Serbian magnate and serving as a kind of co-leader with Uroš, he proclaimed himself king of Serbia. Not everybody agreed, not just of Serbia, but Serbia and Greece. And he tried to expel the Ottomans from the region. And there was a second battle of Mrksich in 1371. And again, the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, won overwhelmingly. Uroš died a couple months later, and that led to another crisis. And so these turns of events weakened Serbia greatly because, again, it put it into a state of lots of small principalities that didn't always work together, sometimes fought one another. And in fact, at the end of that dynasty, Kraljević Marko led for a period, and he, of course, was the son of Vukašin Mrksich. So, these different principalities had different lords, and this is where we first are introduced to Prince Lazar Hrebeljanović. He ruled one section just north of Kosovo. he was very loyal to the Serbian king of Bosnia, Tvrtko. Tvrtko now was a blood descendant of Uroš, and this is one reason that Lazar gave him deference. But Lazar was still regarded by the people as the leader, and he was regarded as much more capable of uniting the Serbian people against the Turks. So there was some confusion during that period. Now, Tvrtko proclaimed himself king of Bosnia. His son, Tvrtko II, was a commander. He extended the kingdom to Crna Gora, parts of Serbia, parts of Croatia. He formed good ties with Lazar because they had a common interest in defeating the Ottoman Empire, and they generally got along well. Now, in this period, Bulgaria was become very weak because it was the first land that the Ottoman Empire went through as it was marching into the Balkans, and they became vassals of the Ottoman Empire. And again, to say what that means, they weren't occupied per se, but they were loyal to the Ottoman Empire. They paid taxes. In periods of war, they would have to furnish their men to fight, and there were other things they might be called to do, but other than that, they were more or less left alone. Now, during this time, Sultan Murad was in charge of the Turkish army, and he had a very strong, unified military force, and he had it in his goal to conquer the Balkans. In 1362, he invaded Bulgaria. About 25 years later, he captured Sofia, the capital city today, and he kept moving. In 1381, so maybe 18 years before the Battle of Kosovo, he launched an invasion of Serbia. But at first didn't work. He was stopped at the river Dubravnica in central Serbia by Prince Lazar's commanders. It was a significant defeat because it was several years before he tried again. Now, he did try again. He took an army of 20,000 men. He was looking for Lazar and his army near the Niš region, and he couldn't find them. Now, the soldiers in his army grew impatient. They either have to fight or they'll find other things to do, and they started pillaging the villages, taking what's useful, mistreating the women and others, burning things down. And this, as you imagine, created a lot of a lot of anger in the Serbian population. Now, Lazar was there. He was hiding with his army, and he saw what was happening. And during the pillaging, there were about 2,000 of the Turkish troops that were in one area, and Lazar and his army came in and crushed them all. And then he found another 12,000 troops, and he came and wiped them out with very little losses to the Serbian army, who was also aided by the Bosnian army, Tvrtko's troops. This strengthened the Serbian resolve. It united the forces under Lazar, who was being recognized as a strong commander, and it drew Bosnia and Serbia together as partners, closer. Now, the Serbs and King Tvrtko now really believed they could push the Ottoman Empire out of Europe, and Sultan Murad realized this. He realized that they were losing their power, and that if they waited, it would just get worse. And so he was determined to strike and try to break the Serbian and Bosnian coalition. And that's what leads us to the Battle of Kosovo. The Turkish army was coming near Kosovo. Tsar Lazar's army was there. They met on the Kosovo Polje, the field of blackbirds. This was a field that was quite flat and had no features to it. And that means neither side had any advantage. You could see everything. Now, the way that those battles went, the two sides lined up in lines facing each other. Lazar was in the middle of his side, and Murad, the Turkish Sultan, was opposite him. To the left of Lazar, Vlatko Vukovic was leading his team. Vlatko was sent by Tvrtko. He was commanding the Bosnian Serbs. He faced Bayezid, who was the Sultan's older son. To the right was Vuk Brankovic. He was the leader of that principality centered in Kosovo. And across him was Jakub, who was the Sultan's younger son. So they're there. The numbers aren't clear. Probably the Turkish army had 30 to 40,000 troops, and Lazar's army had 25 to 30,000. But there are many different estimates. Well, the Lazar side went forward, and to the left, Vukovic broke through the line. And it was very exciting to the Serbian side because they thought they were really winning, so much so that Vukovic sent one of his messengers back to Bosna on his horse to tell Tvrtko, we won, we beat the Turks. But it wasn't over. The Turks pushed back and made significant headway, and now the battle was a little bit even. And as it continued, there was large losses on both sides, and in some sense, the battle still looked to be in favor of the Serbians, but then the commanders got killed. Exactly how, there's debate about. But Murad was killed, and Srdlaza was killed. The story about the Turkish Sultan was that Miloš Obilić, who was a knight on the Serbian side, at the end of the battle pretended to surrender, and they brought him back to the Sultan, and he stabbed him and then was immediately killed himself. Now, Lazar was likely captured after the end of that battle and beheaded, executed. What really also happened was both sides were basically decimated, heavy losses, and they went back. So that day didn't have a clear winner. And in fact, it would take another 70 years for the Ottoman Empire to fully control and occupy the Balkans, 1459. But it is true that the Serbian side didn't have as many soldiers to replace the men who were lost at Kosovo. The Turkish side had many more coming from the east. And certainly Lazar, we know, was a martyr, a hero of the church, and a very important figure in our history. Now, there's also stories and controversy that Brankovic was a traitor, that he had worked a deal out with the Sultan so that he would let them win, and in return he would be given control over the Serbian state as a vassal of the Ottoman Empire. And it's said that before the battle was done, he led his men away from the battle. Now, there are many versions of this, and some versions say that he was in fact very aggressive, strong fighter. We do know after the battle, he went back up to northern Serbia, fought against the Ottomans, refused to become a vassal of Turkey, of the Ottoman Empire, and remained friends with Lazar's widow. So this was the Battle of Kosovo. It was spiritually a very significant event because it had a big effect on the Serbs not winning. It would take, as I said, another 70 years for that to play out, for Serbia to be fully dominated by the Turkish people. Now I want to share a couple stories, and many of you I know have heard these, but one folk story is the night before the battle, Lazar saw images or was approached by Prophet Elijah, who came to him and offered him a choice. He said, you can have victory against the enemy and an earthly crown, or you can have martyrdom and a heavenly crown. Lazar chose the latter. He said, we die with Christ to live forever. He, of course, was canonized as a saint by the church. And I'll read one poem that was very common that survived the ages. of what came out of Lazar's mouth. Whoever is a Serb and of Serb birth and of Serb blood and heritage and comes not to the battle of Kosovo, may he never have the progeny his heart desires, neither son nor daughter. May nothing grow that his hand sows, neither dark wine nor white wheat, and let him be cursed for all ages to all ages. I think that captures much of the effect that the battle had on the Serbian people. There was another story that some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. There was a dinner that Lazar had with his commanders before the battle, the night before. And he stood up and he said, tomorrow Miloš Obilić is going to betray me. And Miloš Obilić stood up and said, that's not true. I'm going to kill Sultan Murad tomorrow. Ratković is going to betray you. And you can see that's related to some of the history that's been passed down through generations, where Obilić did kill the Sultan, and Ratković is painted as a traitor, or at least somebody who ran from the battle. So let's talk a little bit about the aftermath. We have this battle. It was a little bit of a draw, but over the next period of time, the Ottoman Empire was still stronger. Now on the Serbian side, the question is, who would now be the leader? Who replaces Lazar? Well, Lazar had a son, Stefan Lazarević, but he was only 12 years old. Tvrtko from Bosna regarded himself as the true leader. And then Vuk, I was saying Raković earlier, and that's wrong, it's Vuk Branković. Vuk Branković, in many views, was the strongest Serb and the natural successor. Now, Branković went to Hungary, talked to the king, and formed an alliance. He wanted the Hungary support to go after the Ottomans. Milica, who was Lazar's widow, was concerned because her 12-year-old son couldn't be king, and if Branković was ready to be a leader, that means that the boy would never have his chance to lead. And so Milica spoke with some of the leaders in the church and the state and decided to surrender to the Ottoman Empire. She thought it would be better to surrender to the Ottoman Empire than to have Branković lead the Serbs. Now the tragedy is that wasn't necessary because Bayezid, who took over from Murad, was already moving back to the other side of the Ottoman Empire to defend a threat. And so it would be many years before the Ottoman Empire would be making advances in the Balkans again. Now, I should have said one other thing about the battle. When Murad was killed, he had his two sons, Bayezid and Yakub. Bayezid then immediately killed his younger brother so that he wouldn't have any competition for being the next sultan. Murad, his father, their father, did the same thing to his father to gain control. So you can just get a sense of what things were like in that period. Now, Bayezid made some more moves then into Serbia after he cleaned up his challenges in the east. And he ran against the Serbs a few times and lost battles. He was killed in a battle, actually he was imprisoned and died. He had 4 sons, so what happens? Those sons start battling each other to see who would be the ruler. And the Ottoman Empire weakened a bit. They were also weakened because there were Catholic crusades coming from the West who were spreading their faith and attacking the Ottomans. Now, at this point, the Serbian despotate, one of those principalities, was ruled by Đurđa Branković, the son. He was very effective in some battles. They crushed the Turks at Niš in 1443. And at this point, Murad II was running the Ottoman Empire battles. He really was shocked at how badly they were beaten, and he declared a peace with the Serbs and with Branković, returned 20 cities to them for their control, and decided he would leave being sultan. He abdicated the throne, he appointed his son as the sultan, and he went off into a very quiet existence. Well, what happens then? Within a year, Hungary sees that Ottoman is now weak, and they start attacking. Murad too sees what's happening. He comes out of his isolation, and he then goes and takes a force with him, and there was a second battle of Kosovo in 1448 that Murad II won convincingly. And this was really the turning point. This led to new Balkan borders. They really controlled the region, and in 1459, the Ottomans conquered Belgrade, and at that point, 1459, they really did control the whole region. And that's where the occupation fully started. Now, I'm going to just summarize some of what happened over the next 350 years during the occupation. There was a Serbian revolution in 1804. It really played out over the years until 1835. There was a national uprising of the Serbian people, constitutional change in Serbia. Territory in the Ottoman Empire evolved into a rebel territory for Serbs. There were some changes in the constitution, and the Serbs had, for the first time in 350 years, territory they considered their own. They grew, the Ottoman Empire was now weakening, and Serbia declared war on the Ottomans in 1876, and it wasn't until 1912 that the final battle was won that effectively freed Serbia as an independent nation. So this is a very brief summary, but I think you can appreciate a couple of things. How long it took things to play out, how complex it was. The rule was that your enemy's enemy was your friend, and those relationships changed over time as circumstances changed. I want to say one thing though, and then I'm going to make some comments. And this is, in that period in the 14th century, the 1300s, the Serbs had a national identity. That's what brought them together to fight the Ottoman Empire. Where did that national identity come from? Because if you look at the region in the year 1000, there was not a Serbian identity. There were tribes or pockets of people mixed all over the Balkans. It was really the kingdom of Nemanjas over 200 years that gave the Serbian people their identity, their Eastern Orthodox Christian religion, their customs, and made them a people. And this all started with Stefan Nemanja, the father of the dynasty, born in Podgorica, baptized a Catholic, and during the warring was captured and sent to exile in Constantinople. And while the Ottoman Empire was weakened through battles, he left and came back to Serbia. But while he was there, he developed a deep appreciation for the culture and the Orthodox religion and brought that back to Serbia and made that the religion of the people. So he really did start this religion for us. And he started the tradition of a royal church and monastery building. That's when it was very important for these leaders to build monasteries while they were in charge. Now, he abdicated his throne in 1196, returned to a quiet life at Mount Athos, and conferred succession on his son Stefan. He had two other sons, Vukan, the oldest son, and Sava, the youngest. Vukan was very angry. He saw that it was his role to be next in line. And so Vukan paired up with Hungary, made an alliance, and Hungary's king invaded Serbia. Stefan was displaced and banished, and Vukan became the leader. Now, the king of Hungary sent the Catholic bishop to Serbia to convert Serbians to Catholics. But just at that time, the king died. And so this plan fell apart. Stefan came back to power, and you can imagine the relationship between these two brothers. Well, the youngest brother, Sava, reconciled them. Sava returned to Serbia with the remains of their father, and this brought them together. Stefan was crowned king of Serbia by the Pope at that time, and that was really the origin of Serbian statehood. The Serbian church was started at a large level with Sava as the first leader. He founded a national identity. And when the father died in 1236, he was also sainted, Saint Sava, Sveti Sava, and has continued to be an important figure for us. Well, it wasn't long after that that Stefan Dusan took over, and that's where we started our story. It's interesting that Stefan Dusan was the son of Stefan Dechanski, and the way that Stefan Dusan came into power was to put his father in prison. And 2 months later, his father was strangled. Now, we talked about Stefan Dusan as one of the strongest leader of the Serbs to that date. He was never canonized. He was never made a saint because of that ugly history with his father. And so that's a bit of the story. I've been simplistic in many aspects, but I hope it gives you an interest to learn more and read about it. And let me talk a little bit about that period. Imagine being occupied by the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, where in some sense there was still freedom, but in another sense the churches were destroyed and burned. How did this Serbian identity survive? It survived in large part because of the church and because of the stories. Men with their gusle telling the histories and passing this down through generations and maintaining that pride. It really is a remarkable thing to not have your independence for that many years and not lose your identity and still be so passionate to go forward. Now, we all have Serbian pride, and I want you to appreciate this is where it comes from. And I know that when we hear stories and know the work of Mihailo Pupin and Nikola Tesla, that makes us proud. And it makes everybody value the contributions they had. Just a few weeks ago, we see Novak Djokovic become the best tennis player in the world. And we see Nikola Jokic should be 3 times MVP, right? And we see so many other Serbs, such a small region that has such an outsized impact. And the question is, who are the next stars? And this is really for the young people here. These people we talked about were ordinary people who were put in a situation where they had to do extraordinary things, and they had to rise to the occasion. And they did. And you all can as well. And maybe if you allow me a little bit to tell a little bit of my own story, because I'm doing things today that I never knew was possible, or even anybody was doing them when I was a boy. I grew up in the southwest suburbs of Chicago, in the Bellwood church. My parents were immigrants, my father from Bania region, and very disruptive lives by the war. Families were broken, lost. My grandfather was here 10 years before my father joined him. I can't imagine what that would be like. And many of you, all of you have stories just like that. I grew up in a very modest home, didn't have a lot, went to a high school that didn't, I had no idea what college was, I had no idea what could come next, but I had a secret weapon, a real advantage that most kids don't have, and that's my parents. And you all have that too. Parents who support you, teach you to go after your interests and dreams, parents who work hard for you and teach you how to work hard for yourself later. And this is something that many people don't have. And if you don't have it, you don't know you don't have it. Because it requires, how would they know? So, you know, I wound up going to college. I got interested in chemistry. I had a chance to work in a lab. I thought it was just amazing work. And then my professor said, you know, you can go to graduate school and get a PhD at Caltech. I said, I can't go to Caltech. That's the best science and engineering school in the world. He said, you're special. You work hard and you're smart. So I applied and I got in and I went. That first few months I was there and I didn't think I belonged because there were all these students who came from, you know, really wealthy high schools and their parents were scientists and they had a big head start. But I had my parents who taught me, you work hard, you pursue your passion, and you keep going. Now, things started to happen that started to show me maybe I could do this. And then I had a chance for a couple of years as a fellow to go to Harvard University and work for a professor who many say is the #1 chemist in the world. And he was very supportive and said, you really have a future in front of you. And then I wind up getting a job at the University of Chicago as an assistant professor. That's a special place. And those jobs, 300 people apply for them, 5 get interviewed and 1 gets it.
That's you.
I still don't know how that happened, okay? And I worked hard. I mean, I worked 18 hours a day. I saw this as an opportunity that you don't take for granted. And since that time, I've published 250 papers. My work has been cited by other people 50,000 times. I've given over 1,000 seminars across the world, China, Europe, Singapore, and had the chance to invent technologies that are now companies. One is publicly traded, one has been acquired, and serve as a leader at Northwestern as vice president for research. And I'm not trying to brag, I'm trying to show our young generation that you don't know what's in front of you, but you need to go for it. In my current, I still can't believe I come into my office and within my unit there's 700 people that work and a budget of $125 million a year. And where did I learn how to do that? Okay? So, some lessons or messages I like to leave. I'm obviously proud, but more than that, I'm excited for what comes next in the future, what you all will do. I'm excited because you have the chance early in your life to dream. You have the chance to take risks. You can recover from anything that doesn't go well. You have the chance to make mistakes, and you will. Nobody is perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. But it's better to try something and make a mistake than not try it, okay? You should accept all the help you can get from your family, your friends, the church community, your mentors. You'll need it. And your parents especially. And you should remember as you move forward where you came from, who you are, what helped you get here. And you should be generous with your time. You should be generous with your resources. And you should give back and help somebody after you, many people after you. And this is what happened during the Turkish occupation. If everybody just worried about themselves and worried about their bad circumstance, everything would have stopped. But they didn't. They worried more about the future than themselves. They worried more about the next generation than themselves. And that's a lesson for all time. And it's one that you will still be new to, but I can tell you that you'll draw great satisfaction and pride from helping others and sharing with them just like others have shared with you. So I'm going to stop here. Maybe I've gone too long, but thank you all and dobrodošli.
Veliko hvala profesoru doktoru Milanu Mrkšiću. Još jedan veliki aplauz molimo za našeg naučnika i velikog Srbina ovdje u ovoj velikoj zemlji. Sada imamo jedan svečani deo, njegovo preosteštenstvo, episkop Rogin, uručit će gramatu, odnosno odlikovanje profesoru doktoru Milanu Mrkšiću, orden Svetog Mardarija Libertivilskog. Izvolite, Vladiko.
Pa čuli smo svi iz izlaganja našeg dragoga Milana, brata Milana i profesora i gospodina. A ja verujem da je on dobar primjer za ugled mladim generacijama, našoj deci i omladini. Njegov uspeh u nauci i izučavanju, ali i njegov primjer kako se mladi ljudi odnose prema svojim roditeljima, prema svojim korenima, prema svojoj veri i prema svojoj istoriji. I to je nešto zaista za divljenje, ponos. Mi svi verujemo i znamo, koji ga znamo, verujemo i znamo da je njegov primjer ponos cijele naše srpske zajednice i zato sam ja mislio da je jako dobro, a je brat Vlado je sugerirao da mu damo ovdje orden vladike Mardarija, prvog našeg srpskog vladike. Ja mislim da vladika Mardar je isto tako bio vrlo talentovan čovjek. Čovjek puno darova, vrlo lep, pametan i sposoban. Doduše mladi je ono vreme teško bilo, izgoreo je na njivi narodnoj, ali imamo knjigu ovdje u bookstoru o njegovom životu i radu i imamo njegove memoare gdje se vidi da je i on bio jedna taka zvezda na srpskom nebu našeg naroda crkve, kao što je i divna zvezda na nebu naše ovdje zajednice, brat gospodin Milan Mrkšić. I ja verujem, ovo je nagrada njemu za njegov rad i priznanje, malo naše hvala, da tako kažemo, ali isto tako postrek da dalje rad, a i da kao do sada i dok si god živ i zdrav, da se ponosiš sa srpskim imenom i sa verom pravoslavnom. Hvala, živeo.
Vladika, I don't even know what to say. This is such an honor. It's such a special moment, and I wasn't prepared for it. And it's something that I feel I'm not, I feel I don't deserve. There are so many people working so hard for the church and for our people, but I accept it humbly with great pride. I will carry it forward, and I will think about it, and it will inspire me and motivate me to do more and be better. Thank you so much.
Veliko hvala i molim vas još jedan gromoglasniji aplauz za našeg budućeg Nikolu Teslu, ako Bog da, Mihajla Pupina i druge naše naučnike, da se priključi njima u najboljoj želji i volji od strane ove organizacije i nas ovdje.